Testing. Good evening and welcome to the Monday edition of Gold, Goats, and Guns. My name's Tom Luongo. It is Monday, July 16th, and it's the end of the world as we know it. Because Donald Trump committed treason by meeting with Vladimir Putin. So, yes. The Trump-Putin summit has happened. They have met. They came, they met. They trolled the media. It's kind of fun. For those of you who have not watched the press conference, I heartily recommend that you do so. It's about 45 minutes long. I'm going to go over a lot of what I saw. Didn't take extensive notes, but I have some ideas about what I want to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the big thing that I want to talk about, however, is this idea that this was somehow treason, and how the opposition to Trump has completely lost their mind. And I mean, I do believe they actually are now can be considered clinically in. And for those of you who tune in tonight who've never before, and you're of that bent, I've got nothing good to say to you. So if we're gonna start that in an adversarial way tonight, I'm all for it. It's gonna be great. Y'all are insane. As Trump pointed out in his remarks during the press conference, it is insanity to believe that the two largest nations on the face of the planet who control the two nations on the face of this planet who control 90% of the world's nuclear weapons have no way, or in no way should they communicate with each other, is the height of insanity. If all this is a way for you, as one of the resistance, to assuage your denial and your moral outrage at the fact that President Trump are two words that should not go together, I'm sorry, but the rest of us who live in reality land don't give a shit. We really don't. And neither does Putin, and neither does Trump. And I thought Trump's statement today, and I'm going to find it and I'm going to read it because it's the most important statement I think he's made so far as president. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage. But that would not accomplish anything. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics. Now, whoever wrote that, Stephen Mueller, thumbs up. Incredibly important that Trump just laid down the law that peace is more important than politics. Why he met with Kim in South Korea, and they lost their minds. It's why today we have John Brennan saying that this is the height of treasonous behavior, the very definition of treasonous. No, John, it's not. Because for him to have committed treason would be for him to have given something away. User 13 pipes up. The resistance serves the purpose of re-electing Trump for as long as he wants to be president. They will do it quite well. Thanks, resistance. I agree. These things are a gift. Brennan opens his mouth because he's absolutely the one who's the traitor. I loved what Putin said about, when asked about the potential for the 12 Russian intelligence officers just indicted by Mr. Mueller on Friday, conveniently, that I would be happy to allow Mr. Mueller to come over and interview everyone. That would be fine. We have a treaty. We have procedures. And we would like reciprocity. So please drum up Bill Browder, who was convicted in a Moscow court. Mueller's got nothing. If I were Putin, I'd send the 12 guys over there anyway, just to embarrass Mueller. Not just that Brennan's an admitted liar, User 13. He's a traitor. He works for somebody else. He doesn't work. We all know that Helsinki 101 tactics, whatever it is that you're doing, accuse the other guy of. So everybody's out there calling Trump a traitor today on the left. And in order to cover up the fact that they're the ones who are a traitor. It's fantastic. Now, as far as what actually happened, who is Browder and why, and is he in the U.S.? No, he's not in the U.S. because he renounced his U.S. citizenship. His grandfather was a Russian communist who was the head of the head of the American Communist Party at one point. But he's a man who made billions of dollars in Russia in the 90s. Literally, as Lee Stranahan's gone over this 1,000 times, literally raping the Russian oil industry and other industries, literally raping the country and stealing billions of dollars, which he expatriated without paying any taxes. The Russians convicted him of tax evasion, or of tax fraud, and other things. And he's fundamentally the guy behind the Magnitsky Act, which has now the basis for all the targeted sanctions that we have with Russia. And he is probably the single most influential person in Washington for deciding, for informing Congress as to how they should act towards Russia. Love the hat. $26 on Amazon, though it's Prime Day, so you probably get it for $23. But yeah, the fact that Putin actually stood there and said and told the world that everyone was watching, he brought up Bill Browder. $400 million went into Hillary's campaign. That I don't know if the contribution was legal or illegal. That's immaterial. We have an issue with him back here in Russia. So quid pro quo. Unbelievable. What a day. And then Putin takes it one step farther. Now you gotta remember that Putin has no reason not to say anything. I mean, I think, I think everybody's kind of overplaying the importance of Putin mentioning both Browder and Soros, because Putin talks about Soros all the time. I mean, he kicked his NGOs out of the country. I mean, I don't know if he's gone as quite so far as to issue an arrest warrant for the man, but this is nothing. This is not out of character for Vladimir Putin at all. So I just thought it was fantastic that he used that platform, used this platform with Trump to really get in a couple of unbelievable bits of hypocrisy and to just drive the nail home. It was great. Also, I will say this. So whoever that was from, was it AP or Newsweek or CNN? Doesn't really freaking matter. They're all the same. Ask his questions, and the one about, President Trump, do you feel that the Russians have any compromising information on you or whatever? I actually felt bad. Aside from the fact that I can't believe that guy went all the way to Helsinki, Finland to ask that question. But you could tell that Putin was embarrassed for the United States that our media has sunk to that level, because after both RT and TASS, or one of the other Russian news agencies, they asked very pointed and very serious questions. It is shameful, their behavior. Yeah, I know Lee's in Helsinki right now, north, so I've been throwing stuff Lee's way as well. So maybe he'll be bored and stop by tonight, but I sincerely doubt. I think it was Reuters. Getting laughed at by Putin must have been humiliating. It was insane. He just kind of laughed and then got angry. I don't know if anybody noticed, but the end of that press conference was the most energetic either of them were. Because then then you got the stare. And then he just looked that guy right in the eye and just hammered him and hammered him and hammered him. Because Putin does not suffer fools. Period. And stop. He doesn't suffer fools gladly or lightly. No, he doesn't suffer fools. Period. So, and in that respect, I think for the first time in a long time, a lot of Americans finally got the chance to see Vladimir Putin as Putin. I also love the fact that Putin put the ball back in Trump's court, which is a play on what Lavrov and Pompeo have been going back and forth. All right. Oh, I know Lee's been vindicated. Fantastic. I mean, Lee Stranahan's coverage on all of this stuff is exemplary. Is exemplary. And our media was embarrassed on the world stage. But that's nothing new. These guys don't care anymore. They've lost their minds. They have no other, they don't have any other, they don't have any other recourse, guys. I mean, they're losing in every way. So it's quite fascinating to watch this play out. I mean, I honestly have to say it's quite fascinating. So now let's talk about what's important, what actually came out of the meeting that I can parse from the press conference. First thing that I can parse out of the press conference is there will be no more action by the United States in an official capacity against the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. I think Trump's demeanor at the beginning of the presser was quite low energy. And yeah, I know that Putin speaks English. He chooses not to. So, I thought Trump's early remarks were at best lackluster. And to me, he just looked tired. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. But someone on my Twitter feed brought up an interesting point, and I wanted to bring it up to you, not because I'm convinced of this or anything, but simply because it's an interesting take, which is to say that Trump came out of the meeting with Putin looking like a man who had been given information that distressed him terribly. Like, he had a lot on his mind in a way that he didn't have before, or that a lot of his assumptions had been, you had the look of a man whose assumptions about how things were and how things are have changed. Better or for the worse, I don't know. Oh. And so that's two potential takes on the way Trump was at the beginning of the press conference, and he only really perked up the minute he started getting challenged by the media about collusion and all that other stuff. But when it came down to talking about energy policy, the Nord Stream pipeline, for all intents and purposes, especially his response to the first Russian journalist who asked about Nord Stream, he understood that it really looked to me like he understood that he has taken his opposition to the Nord Stream pipeline as far as he can. He doesn't want Germany involved. He doesn't want Germany to issue the permits and allow it to be built to the German border. He doesn't want any of these things to happen because he thinks it's a bad idea. But he also had the look of a man who realized, I can't stop this. And that's fine. He's got, it's reality. And it's it almost looks like Trump came out of that meeting with Putin realizing that whatever cards he thinks he had, he doesn't have. And I think that may be one of the potential interpretations of, and one of that we can go forward with when watching the next couple of weeks, next couple of months to see how things work out. Because if so, then I think Trump realizes now he's got a greater row to hoe in his energy dominance policy than he thought. Okay. Yes, TX, I'm not sure that he really wanted to stop the pipeline, but I think the State Department more wanted to stop the pipeline than he did. I think the Bill Browder wing of the Republican Party, carry a meme forward or an idea forward, wanted the pipeline stopped. I don't think it's going to get stopped. The American state worked very hard to stop Nord Stream 2. Yeah, no. Now Kulbers brings up a good point, which is to say he agrees with me, but he feels that they're on the same page on humanitarian issues, and I don't think Putin wants us to fail. Oh, I know he doesn't want. I know Putin and Xi both do not want the United States to fall apart. They are not looking for dominance. They are looking for a bigger seat at the table than the American political establishment are willing to admit that they deserve. Don't have to. We're in charge. When you're the emperor, you don't negotiate, you dictate. And I think that part of what came out of this meeting today, and what part of even these, the left and whatnot were picking up on, was that Trump looked a little defeated. But, in a sense of he's having to reassess some of his assumptions about how the world works, or how Russia sees the world and the way the Chinese see the world. So gonna be interesting to watch how things play out going forward. You know how I feel about this. For those of you who are regulars, I felt that there was very little area of real concession that Putin had to make in this initial meeting. Trump had really nothing to offer him that was concrete, and I'm sure that they threw everything on the table at him, and Putin said no. I'll tell you the same thing I've told Angela Merkel, and I'll tell you the same things I've told Macron and everybody else. No, there can be no discussion about Crimea. Crimea is Russia. There's going to be no discussion about the Donbass. You get your pet Poroshenko to, and you get your pets in Ukraine on a shorter leash, and we'll talk. As far as Syria is concerned, I think that's where the greatest amount of overlap lies, and I think that their statements, reading between the lines and their statements on Syria, has me cautiously optimistic that they're going to move forward with certain troop movements and whatnot, because the militaries understand the situation. So as long as the two men at the top understand the imperatives and they set out clear guidelines and clear goals, then I think you're going to see slowly over the course of time the United States is going to pull out of Syria. No, I don't think Trump cares about Crimea as well. I think he's more worried about energy security and a way to make sure that his energy dominance policy can allow for a greater market share of American LNG and oil into Europe. And I think that that's part of the reason why he wants Iran's exports off the market. And that's that. But I'll tell you something else. I read something this morning, and it's not the first story like this that I've read in the last few weeks, is that the United States is sitting down to talk to the Taliban about the situation in Afghanistan and a means by which for the United States to end the conflict. So if that's the case, then that would dovetail nicely with the interpretation that they mostly agree about what's gotta happen going forward in Syria. And it's going to be Netanyahu that brokers whatever security deal happens. You know that Lindsey Graham was out there today saying the idea that the Russians can secure anything in Syria is laughable. And like, Lindsey, really, seriously, take Raytheon's dick out of your mouth, for Christ's sake. I mean, come on, man. User 13 pipes up and says quite explicitly, there should not be any discussion about these things, i.e. Ukraine. It disturbs me that Americans are so cavalier in supporting banderists who intend to ethnically cleanse Russians, especially after Odessa, referring to the Odessa massacre. People were burned alive, and that the banderists, the right sector neo-Nazis of Ukraine, were planning on going in and ethnically cleansing all the Russians off of Crimea. And the United States was sending Marines in via the USS Donald Cook to assist the process. I did see John McCain's comments on Twitter, and all I have to say is, hey man, if you can tweet from home, then you can go to work. Even Justo Raimondo writes an article here or there. Good evening, Ari Magoo. Be here for another 35 to 40 minutes. Who do you think is running McTrader's Twitter account? I don't know, but whoever they are, they need to do a better job. $400 million to Hillary via the intelligence community. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this earlier. The whole thing with Browder is just fantastic. Because Browder truly is one of the most vile human beings. And for Putin to call him out publicly like that at this moment in time, crazy good. As far as the Golan Heights are concerned, I think what you're going to see, Ari, I don't have anything concrete here, but what I'm going to tell you is that I think it's pretty obvious that the Golan Heights that Putin is going to be willing to sacrifice the Golan Heights at least in the immediate term, in terms of what he's willing to secure, in order to get any kind of deal to get the United States to draw down in Syria. Coolbers pops up, and I'm going to agree with you, Coolbers. I'm going to read his comment, which is, I feel in my bones that we can work with Putin fairly and set the world straight. So Buck asks, do you think Trump will move on the deep state with the revelations today? No, not in any time soon. I think Trump is honestly looking ahead to the midterms, and I can almost feel like this press conference, this summit, is less than I hoped for. I'm not going to lie. Given the state of expectation, I'm in the middle of I stopped. I was finally put all my thoughts together, and I was working on an article I'm going to submit into Strategic Culture for later in the week, and then stop to do this, and I'll finish it up before I go to bed tonight. But given the state of insanity on the political left and the level of desperation of the U.S. deep state, I should have probably tempered my expectations, but I can tell you that I think everything's slightly different. I mean, Putin coming out and saying, look, the Cold War is over. Cold War is over. Now, can we move on? And can we start acting like adults? Let's clean this stuff up. Because you got to remember that Putin's not the one who started any of this, but he's the one who's absolutely going to end it. And I think that's what I mean by when I talk about Trump's energy and his body language to start the press conference, that it's very, very possible that he finally came to the conclusion that I don't really have a lot of cards to play here. The best I can do is try and compete with them on energy, but I don't have a way in on stopping the Russians, because they're, as he said, a very good competitor. They have us on price. They have us on long-term relationships. They have us on, I mean, honestly, what are we going to do? Put a natural gas pipeline under the Atlantic? No. Not happening. Exactly. But as far as what he does, I think that this summit, to get back to Buck's original point, because I never did get around to finishing it, which is that I think Trump called this summit to start the process, sit down and use this as an opportunity to nail down the midterm elections, and then set things in the right, on the right path going forward. And if that's all it accomplishes today, that's all they accomplished today, it was great. It's a win. Because the left is going to immolate itself on its insanity. Do we know the specifics of the $400 million? Did it go through the foundation of the campaign? I don't know. Joanne Leone asked this question, and honestly, Joanne, the better person to ask on that would probably be Stranahan. It was very telling when Putin said, I wish China and the U.S. would solve their trade issues, and they should. But there's a real problem with the fact that David Stockman is right and that Trump has a 17th century view of trade. And there's not a lot you can do about that. He's not going to change who he is. The natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean is a factor. It is. And I think that one of the things that the Russian journalist who asked the question about Nord Stream made a very good point, saying, didn't you guys sell LNG to the Europeans this winter? There's not enough supply. There's plenty of room in the European market for a lot of people. So what's the big worry? The big worry, Ari, to me, is that they're going to continue to ramp this up to the point of no return. And I think that's a sincere probability. I don't give it, huge odds in the short term, but I see this as one of these emerging trends that's only going to get worse because these people refuse to accept it. We're now almost 2 years after Trump's election, and they're crazier now than they were after he was elected. Is the trade war going to end up crashing the economy? Very possible. It's going to cause a super cycle spike in the dollar. super cycle spike in the dollar is not something this economy, this world economy, can handle right now, given the insane levels of dollar denominated debt, thanks to 10 years worth of zero bound interest rate, or at least 9 years worth of zero bound interest rate. What they've done, it's not that they're craving World War III, Shane Bill, but I don't understand how anybody can rationally vote either. What they've done is they've convinced themselves that Trump being elected was a mistake, and that it fundamentally couldn't have happened, because there can't be that many bad people in the world, because we're the goodies. They're saying to themselves, we're the goodies and everybody else is the baddies. There can't be that many baddies. It's always been that there's only like 25 or 30% baddies, and the rest of us everybody else is really like us. And so to them, Trump winning had to be the fault of somebody else. And so the deep state gave them the boogeyman, Putin, and they've just run with it, because it's either that or face the reality that they're actually a minority. That they can't handle. And yes, WDM, you're right. The deep state did go all in on 9/11, and they have kept doubling down on terrorism and the security state and all the rest of it. I know they're being told what to say, Buck. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of them are willing participants in the process of being told what to say. You can't deny that they're willing participants in this process. And so create a bunch of willing participants, and then you create, but then the problem with that is once that starts, it gets out of control. It's well beyond the ability of people like David Brock and George Soros and and Obama and the rest of them and Bill Browder to control. At some point, it breaks containment. And I think that's where they are right now. User 13 pipes up and says, this is like my gay friends who only hang out with other gay people who are convinced, absolutely convinced, that a quarter of the population is gay. Right. I was talking to a friggin' kid this weekend over at our monthly game day on Saturday, and I said, look, the reality of the situation is that 5% of the population is gay? Maybe. Not 10. It's closer to 3. Trans are not even a statistical, they're not even interesting statistically. But they're convinced of this in the same way that Democrats are convinced that they are a majority of the people in this country. And they're not. They haven't been for a long time. For a very long time. And all you have to do is look at the state house races. All you have to do is look at the state legislatures and the governorships and the trends. And they're very, very, very clear. Paper ballots will not fix it. We have plenty of paper ballots. They're now vote frauding through paper ballots. They just print up thousands of them and call them write-in and call them mail-in votes. That's what the whole purpose of early voting and all of this other stuff is, in order for them to cheat behind the scenes. Broward County, you remember 2016, the girl, the woman at the Broward County Supervisor of Election Office got sued, got fired right before the election for looking in an open door and seeing stacks of ballots that weren't supposed to be there. She was fired 15 minutes later. Right after, and by the way, this kid that I was talking to didn't know that Hillary Clinton met with the Supervisor of Elections of Broward County 2 weeks before the election. And he's like, no, go prove it. Go to your phone and prove it. I'm like, no, fuck you. I don't have to go prove shit. Go look it up, asshole. You're so goddamn uninformed that you don't know what's going on, and you have opinions about elections in this country and how there's no vote fraud? Screw you. You go look it up. Don't you just say, oh, there's no vote fraud. No, you have to go out there and you have to look for it. And when people are telling you that there's real voter fraud in this country, go believe it. When there's 3 million people in this country on driver's licenses that are not, who have driver's licenses that they use to vote with and do not, and are not actually citizens, got news for you. Right. They're doing it through mail-in and early voting fraud. I've been saying since the moment we started talking about smart contracts, the first day I heard of Ethereum. Now we can like slip over to crypto for a second. First time I heard of anything about Ethereum, and I heard, oh, well, you can do a smart contract. You can set conditional, you can set conditions on the transaction to make sure it went through. I said, there's two things that popped immediately into my head: voting and property sales. Everything else does not fucking matter as far as I'm concerned. Just passed a voter law, ID voter law in New Hampshire. Yeah, and by the way, the backwards evil Russians are already experimenting with blockchain-based voting on the Ethereum blockchain. On an Ethereum-like blockchain. Yep. City of Moscow elections were going to be handled that way this year. Probably they did a dual system with the actual paper ballots and the blockchain-based ballots, but oh yeah, it's already happening. Yeah, well, Ari, there aren't two main camps. It's like you have to remember that there are, on this issue, I think there is probably two main camps, but in general, there are three phases to the U.S. election, the electorate. There's the Democrats, there's the Republicans, and there's the Independents. And the Independents are at least 30 to 35% of the the electorate. Of course, I'm saying the evil Russians. I'm saying, of course, I'm saying tongue firmly planted in cheek. Okay, so so understand that it's that 30% in the middle that you're trying. That's what everybody fights over. Because everybody else is kind of in their hard corners, but the middle of this country is going to reject the Democrats as they are sinking further and further into insanity over the course of the next two election cycles. This election in 2020. By 2024, it will be, or certainly by the end of 2020, Trump's re-election campaign, I think we'll see a collapse of support for the Democratic Party at a national level that will be terminal. Democrats and unaffiliated were 40% plus now. Fair enough. Independents and unaffiliated were 40%. Fair enough. Yeah. They're 40%. The other two are around 28 to 30%. And it's everybody in the middle that matters. That's what everybody cares about. Those guys. Say you're an independent, but you're really hard right after being a massive lefty. Well, that's a kind of a, I don't know. One of these days I'll make a libertarian out of you. All right. So really fascinating to watch all this play out. So I don't think, so going back to my original, or going all the way back, 15 minutes now, I don't think there will be any more movement on the Nord Stream pipeline. I think Nord Stream's going to happen. Trump is going to work overtime to improve the economics of where he can, to improve the economics of U.S. LNG. But doing so by trying to destroy Iran and destroy Venezuela and destroy everybody else and destroy the competition is not a good is not a good plan. Okay? I mean, you want to sell oil to people, that's fine. But the world needs oil, but they only need a certain amount of it. And, Putin made it abundantly clear that, oil as a, oil and gas as energy commodities have to work in a specific price band to maximize everybody's what's the word I'm looking for? Maximize everybody's advantages, right? Maximize consumer buying power and economic growth with oil and gas profits. No. We have done a lot of work to help Venezuela destroy itself. Fuck. Don't. Maduro is an idiot and he's the bus driver and the rest of it, but we have done an awful lot to help Venezuela along. So let's not mince words here. I'm not saying that they weren't going to go there eventually anyway. Okay, I'm not saying that, but they have a lot fewer. They have a lot more. They've gone through a lot more pain than they need to. In the same way that Iran is in the same boat, they've gone through a lot more pain than they absolutely need. Yeah, I mean, seriously, is that really what you want? Think about this. In response to that, Buck, here's user 13. Can we all agree that destabilizing Venezuela is the worst idea ever? Do we want a bunch of South American commies moving to Florida and Georgia? I know I don't. So it's just yeah, not good. So no Nord Stream pipeline. I think the military, I think the Russian Ministry of Defense and the American generals, I think those guys will work well together. And I think they're doing for the most part, a bang up job of staying out of each other's way in Syria. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that we haven't had a lot of incidents in the last couple of months where the Americans have fired on Russians or even fired on Syrians. I think that may truly end at some point. And if it does, then we'll be in good shape. But we got to keep watching that because you never know. But the truth of the matter is that I'm sure that Putin told Trump flat out, he's like, look, I'm not going to sign anything. You haven't proven anything. You haven't proven to me that you're any more agreement capable than your predecessors. I'm not going to do it. The United States is untrustworthy. And your word is not your bond. And it's going to be hard for Trump to say otherwise. He's got a lot of work to do. Again, I'm sure that Putin threw the JCPOA in his face. I'm not saying that, we can all sit here and agree to disagree about whether it was a good move or a bad move. I didn't think it was a particularly good move. But I can see both sides of the story. But that means that Trump is going to have to work extra hard to get Putin to agree to anything in writing. Got to remember that. It's been burned many, many times by the United States. And it speaks to kind of the solipsism of American political commentators, and at times myself included, that we think, well, if we walk over there with an offer, Putin will just take it. Bullshit. There's this whole idea. I mean, if you read through a lot of some of the alternative commentary, but certainly the mainstream commentary about what Trump should do when he goes over there and what he should offer to Putin and blah, 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 blah. And Putin will probably take this deal because it's the best he's going to get. And, when you stop to think about Syria, Putin made the statement that we need to start securing areas of Syria so that Syrians can come home. And he made the important point. Everybody talks about European migration, but the majority of Syrians have been displaced into Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan. They're the ones bearing a tremendous burden. Certainly Lebanon is. And we've continued to destabilize things in Idlib, which is right next to Lebanon. So, north of Lebanon. All of this has got to end. This is what's got to end. What's got to happen. Good evening, Thordum. How are you? So, well, it's because Canada's getting hammered from the refugee crisis. To that, I reply, have an idiot for a prime minister. Believe me, I love Canadians. I don't like Justin Trudeau. All right. So there's a lot of good things to come out of this today, but nothing really concrete. It was good that Trump and Putin were able to see eye to eye on some things. I think they have better respect for each other than they did in the past. But I can tell you that if their meeting went the way I think it might have, Trump went in with one set of assumptions and came out with another set. And if anything, take care. Ari, we'll see you. Thanks for stopping by. If anything, stop for a second. If anything, Trump walked out of that meeting having to reassess the quality of the people giving him advice. Yeah, we talked about Browder earlier, Thordum, and so I do love the fact that Lee Stranahan's work was vindicated when Putin mentioned Browder. You want me to talk about Putin's body language? I mean, I'm a body language expert, Buck. I mean, I'm really not. I didn't watch it very carefully. I just thought Putin, during the press conference, Putin looked relatively calm. He looked relatively calm, and he didn't look uncomfortable. He didn't. So I don't know. I think Trump looked low. Like I said earlier, I think Trump looked very low energy, and I think he looked almost a little defeated. Trump and Putin didn't look like he was lording over anything with Trump. But Putin is a tremendous statesman. He's very generous with the people that he worked with other world leaders, even ones that he's kind of gotten the upper hand with. User 13, I was going to say, and so now, and when I made that point earlier about, having to reassess the quality of his people around him, User 13 brings up that I'd love it if Trump sidelined Bolton after all of this. He was supposedly the point man. Right. Bolton went with a bunch of proposals, none of which went anywhere. And so if Trump's body language, if I'm reading that properly, and again, this is only one, I can convince myself of anything at the end of the day. So take this all with, salt this to taste, take it as, take it with as many caveats as you need to. My thought here, though, but the reason I think this may be the correct interpretation, which is that Trump's assumptions about how things work have been altered, is because it's the most likely scenario. That most likely Trump went in there and got a 2-hour talk with Putin that was eye-opening, and that Trump wasn't probably prepared for at the level of detail that Putin was willing to give him. Because remember, I've been saying for a while now, for a long time, now that I think about it, now I go back and I really put this together. Let's think about this, right? Throughout 2014, 2015, 2016, now 2014, 2015, I wasn't writing publicly. I was writing for my newsletter for Newsmax, but I told my subscribers back then, and then I started talking about it in the blog when I first started first really started up Gold, Goats, and Guns. What I said was that every time a ceasefire was broken, every time an agreement was violated, the Russians are sitting down and they're writing a laundry list of every one of these episodes. Because when this Syrian war is all over, they're going to take this and they're going to use it as a bludgeon against the United States and the United Nations in any negotiations or whatever. That, Putin is not dumb. He bides his time and he is a patient man and understands that sometimes the best way to win is to just continue documenting the mendacity of your opponent. So you go into a meeting with Trump with a laundry list, right, of these offenses, and what's Trump going to do? Does Trump know about all these things? He's a high-level CEO executive kind of guy. He wants the bullet points, he wants the high points, and he's going to run from there. Putin is an intelligence officer. He's going to give you detail and detail after detail after detail after detail. Two completely different men in how they manage things. So you can imagine that it would be pretty easy to imagine that Putin would have given Trump a laundry list of Russia's problems with the way the United States has acted. How are these talks different from the other two meetings? Meaning like Kim and which one? The first one they did? The first one they did, they were just talking about Syria. And they needed to do something to establish some calm. They've talked on the phone many, many times. They say this, that they've talked on the phone plenty, but it's different. Now they were each going to bring their laundry list of grievances to the table and start working shit out. Well, there was only one other. Well, yeah, I guess they did meet it at. Well, this is the one where they were actually going to lay out their laundry list of information of grievances, right? This is Trump's position. This is Putin's position, and then before they were just getting to know you kind of things, or they were very specific about little things on the sidelines. I'm sure that they've worked that certain things they're in complete agreement about. Yeah, North on 60, you're right. That is the real question. Who is feeding Trump what information and how, and whether he's horribly misinformed. I know he's misinformed. I also know that he has long held positions about how to fix the world that go all the way back to the 1990s. Right? So let's not forget that either. And you have to mix those two together. You have to mix Trump's own biases and his own long held positions about the way he thinks the world works and blah, 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 along with whatever he's getting from his staff. Some of whom may or may not be actually working for him, ultimately. Right? And their biases and all of it. So, I'm not going to say that anybody here won this opening round, because there is no winning, and everybody wins if these two guys talk and can come to some agreements about them. WDM brings up a very interesting point. It was one I was talking about with my partner this afternoon. For the U.S. and Russia in the next 50 years, the goals are the same: China containment. Russia is more vulnerable by far than we are. Yes, that I don't know that China containment say is the issue. What my partner brought up to me this afternoon was that, you got to remember that at some point, China is going to turn expansionist. Like in a real sense. And the whole center section of Russia is ripe for borders. There is no border out there. The borders are all fiction. And so I know that's part of the reason why Trump has been serious about, or not Trump, Putin, my mistake, and I apologize, but that Putin has been really desirous about pushing population out into the hinterlands. And that means pipeline projects, that means all the Silk Road stuff. They are all working together on the same, but don't kid yourselves. They are working on a great number of things together, and they consider their relationship a strategic partnership. But that doesn't mean that at some point they're also not rivals. They're still Russia and China. They still don't like each other very much. Okay, so the Silk Roads project is a means by which for everybody to win, but at some point, okay, but at some point, you have to worry about what China's actual goals are. And so part of what I think Putin is hoping for is to develop the interior of Russia, pipelines, and the rest, in order to move significant amounts of population out there in order to be able to actually defend the territory. Why the land grants? That's why accepting the 150,000 boar farmers. That's why why the Russians have they don't have an open immigration policy, but they have they accept a certain number of people in every year. They they are absolutely trying to get the Russian diaspora to come back home, right? All of that stuff. So everybody's a competitor at a certain level, and I don't think anybody would argue with that. If you asked, Putin, Xi, Trump, the rest of them, they would all say, yeah, we're competitors at a certain level. Not rivals, not enemies that need to be dominated, competitors. Problem is that in many ways, a lot of American exceptionalist thinkers believe that we have the right to dominate because we had the accident of geography that gave us the moral authority to dictate to the world for 100 years. No, it really doesn't. But that mentality is still heavily ingrained in the United States political class, especially in the heads of all those freaking neocon commies who are now all going home to the Democratic Party. And good, where they belong. Real cognitive dissonance comes in when you explain to all these guys who are in the Republican Party who are still fundamentally neoconservative in their foreign policy outlook, but love Trump. I mean, we're talking about the Adam Gingriches. Don't have any fucking clue. The Seb Gorkas of the world. I mean, Seb Gorka is looking like a jackass now. And I've always said that. So I always thought Seb Gorka was clown shoes anyway. Because he wouldn't do an interview with someone who was paid for, who made his living being paid by a Russian news agency. I mean, what a jackass. China has a large population that wants to leave China, 500 million learning English. Gorka's a drunk. I don't even care. I just know he's clown shoes. All right, guys, it's coming up on the 1 hour mark. Anybody have any other things they want to ask or issues you might want to discuss? Said, pretty happy overall. Hoping for a little bit more. Can't really complain. I think at the end of the day, knowing if the interpretation, that interpretation is right, that Trump got an information enema today, is correct, all to the better. Yep. No, China's WDM, you're absolutely right. China's ambitions are global. Absolutely are. What did Gingrich say, North on 60? She's telling me that Gingrich just made a horrible statement. Yes, Gorka isn't. But why would anybody believe otherwise that Newt Gingrich would make anything other than a horrid statement? I don't like Newt Gingrich. I never have. Shubal asks a good question on Periscope. How will this summit change their next meeting for Trump? That's a good question. And what I'm hoping, and I'll tell you what I hope for. I don't know what's actually going on. But I think Trump is going to go back with, if his assumptions about how the world works changed, how Russia works, and what Russia's goals are, then what I'll say is this: he's going to make some substantive changes to the way he gets his information as president, because he's going to need to. You know who pays Newt Gingrich's salary. So Gingrich tweeted out that Trump just made the biggest mistake of his presidency, yada, yada, yada. Well, then you know exactly who Gingrich works for. And you should have never been surprised about who he works for. Yep, Trump's allies are now denouncing him. Gingrich said it was the worst mistake Trump ever made. Dissing intel community. Even Molly Hemingway on Fox said it was a mistake. Total freakout. Great. The intelligence community in the United States, they're all, you know why they're saying this? Is because they're all scared. You know why? Because they're all compromised. Because every one of them is compromised. It's like Chuck Schumer sneering at Trump that you don't go against the CIA, because you know what happens when you go against the CIA, right? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Of course, everybody was trying to get Trump to hire Newt, including the Adam Gingriches and the Jack Posobics and all these other fucking assholes. Pardon my friend. These guys are crap. Molly Hemingway is a never Trumper. I don't even know who the hell she is. I don't watch Fox News. I know that Chris Wallace was going to interview Putin tonight. It was going to be a big deal. I'm like, I almost want to believe that. Well, but Joanne, okay, before I go off on that, Joanne made the statement that Molly Hemingway defended him a lot on Fox. Okay, fair enough. Guess what? When push comes to shove and the empire's on the table, not in the foreign, you always know what the wedge issue is. Always foreign policy. It's always the frickin' Russians. Always the military industrial. Yeah, Gingrich was always that guy. I'm really surprised that anybody would even think that he wasn't. I mean, I never thought Newt Gingrich was anything other than a great historian of dubious loyalties. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys all want to keep breathing and they all want to keep eating. They all want to keep getting paid. Just that simple. You could always say that Gingrich. I could easily spin out a scenario right here, going all the way back to the contract with America and how he caved. That Gingrich was always a stalking horse for the deep state. Chris Wallace embarrassed himself, kept interrupting, would not listen to Putin's answers. I don't even know why Putin does the interviews with you. It is insane to think what we're the world that we're living in. It's insane to think that this is how desperate these people are. And when you know, sure as shit, when everybody is against Donald Trump, he's making the right decision. Know a man in politics by his enemies. Always. Always. Chris Wallace is a childish fool. Why does anybody... Why... Like I said, I'm not even going to watch the interview. It's like watching another Megyn Kelly interview with Vladimir Putin. What's the fucking point? We know what she's going to do. We know what Wallace is going to do. Putin was smart. He wouldn't go on. He wouldn't even talk to the major networks. He would give Alex Jones a fucking... Do I think Putin will give Trump info to use against the deep state / Clinton, etc.? I think he already has. I think that's why Trump I'm thinking that's why Trump was a little low energy at the beginning of this presser, going, we've got a lot of work to do. That was the major theme that came out of both of their mouths. It was good. We have a lot of work to do. And in many ways, Trump looked like a guy who read the Riot Act. Why does anybody think that guy is conservative? His dad was Mike fucking Wallace. Exactly. There it is. All right, guys, we're at an hour 6. Getting tired. Been up since 5:30. Lee scoring a Putin interview would have been awesome. Yeah, that's correct. It's not going to happen. He's too he's too marginal. So. Yeah, I mean, they did make a WDM. That's an interesting point, and they did make a point about talking about how they work together to thwart terrorist plots. Right? Think about that. Interesting point. I'll leave it on that. You guys, you have a great night. If you like what you heard tonight, please like the video down below. And if you're new to the stream, go ahead and subscribe and subscribe to the notifications. I do these Monday nights at 8, Friday nights at 9, and impromptu during the week when things of import happen. Try to do one on Wednesday mornings. You can follow my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com, and you can subscribe to the Gold Goats and Guns Investment newsletter, where we can take all of this stuff, wrap it up into a nice kind of tight portfolio allocation strategy, and I save some of my best geopolitical analysis for my subscribers. I don't tell you everything that's going on in my head. That should give you an idea of where I'm actually going with a lot of this stuff. You guys take care. You have a great night. Keep your stick on the